All right, folks, we have deployed, we have rolled off for the mission, we have everything ready to rock and roll. So here's what happened. We've got mission number 31 in the Grand Tournament pack. This is overrun, so you have 3 objective markers. 1 is in your deployment zone, 2 are just outside of it, and then the same thing on the other side. There's 2 just outside of the deployment zones and 1 that is just in your deployment zone in the back. You have to control 2 to get 5 points, control 3 to get 10 points, and control more than the opponent for the full 15. And the mission specific secondary is if you control the objective markers in your opponent's side of the field, so Drukhari would have to come over here, control one of these 3 here, or 2 or 3 of them. You earn points according to how many you control. If you can snag one of them, then you get 2 victory points at the end of your command phase. If you control 2 of your opponent's markers, you get 3 points. And if you control all 3 of your opponent's deployment markers, you get 5 points. So what that means is not what that means, but what we're going to do is the Drukhari have actually taken overrun, the mission specific one, because they intend to be in the face of the Grey Knights. The other 2 secondaries, we took aboard the Witch because I want to see how well that scores against Grey Knights now. And then also took Domination. I have, on the Drukhari side, enough bodies to hold the different objective markers that I have on my side of the board. And with the speed and agility of the Drukhari, we should probably be able to get at least 1 from the Grey Knights at some point during the game, hopefully more than once during the game. So that's what we're trying here for the Drukhari. And for the Grey Knights, it is Domination again. I had a slight revelation the other day after playing Josh and his Blood Angels. The Grey Knights, I usually take engage on all fronts because of how fast we can be, but the Grey Knights are kind of more of a, well, not necessarily, but I think if I play them more as a castle army with a few outliers going out to cause trouble and raise mayhem, then I might have a little bit more luck. So I'm not doing engage on all fronts. I'm going to play Domination because I'll definitely be able to hold my 3. And then I can send up a squad of paladins at a turn if I wish to, or hold a squad back and put the Grandmaster up. I've got the interceptors who are also fast. So we should be able to knock some of the smaller units off of objective markers on their side. But the other thing that it's going to do is both armies taking Domination is going to force some defensive play and or all-out aggressive play. So we'll see. We know the Drukhari like to be aggressive. That's just kind of what they do. The Grey Knights, I think, for this game are going to be a little bit more defensive. I think that might work much better. So we'll find out how that plays out in the end. The other objectives, secondaries, I took for Grey Knights was Bring It Down, because I want to try to see how that one goes as well against Drukhari, because that's always been an auto take against Drukhari. Might be less so now. So we're going to do that. And then the third and final one, I'm having a complete brain fart. Taking Raise the Banners with Grey Knights. I very rarely do that because we have so few units that you want to not be busy or don't want to be busy. I figure what we're going to do is stay back and defend this side. And so the Stripe squads can all just get in range to raise the banners on all 3 of our objectives and then just kind of sit there. We'll do some screening. There's no deep strike from the Drukhari in this game, but still we can kind of raise banners and stay relatively hidden while putting the pressure on, and that should be 3 points a turn for a while until the Drukhari can actually get up and take stuff away. So that's the thinking. I think it'll go pretty well. I think it'll go well. I think it'll work out. The deployment, you've seen the Grey Knights, there's nothing sneaky about that. I'm not actually deep striking any units for the Grey Knights. So we're going to keep everybody together and castled. On this side, this Venom actually has the Succubus and Drazar in it. They're not standing on the ground behind it. The Incubi are starting on the field. The 10 Racks, Homunculus for the Prophets of Flesh, and the Talos are here. Inside this Raider, we have the 10 Witches. The idea being they disembark and get their 3-inch head start from disembarking, then they can move their 8 inches, they can advance and then still charge. So in theory, it should be an easy job getting across the field into something to hold something down. I don't know how it'll work today, but I've seen 10 witches hold down paladins in the past, which is kind of comical, but it does actually happen. And then with the shard net in each of my witch squads could actually be really obnoxious. So I'm going to try that. We'll see how it goes. And once the witches get out, the incubi will jump into the raider, and then the raider can move and get them into a better position. Or maybe they stay on the field. We'll have to see what happens. Next, we have the Racks from the Dark Techno Patrol. The Homunculus from Dark Techno is back here. Then we have the 2 Reapers on this side. Wanted to keep them where they can be within the 6-inch bubble of the Homunculus. I realize this one to the right is just outside of that. Depends on who goes first. Not a lot of long-range firepower from the Grey Knight, so probably will still be okay. And he can shift over to get in range. And the Reapers will have range with their high-powered shot to get on line of sight and targeting onto just about anything they wish to if they go first. So we'll see what happens there. The 5 Witch squad over here is deployed behind the rock. They're in range to move around and get to this objective marker to hold it for domination. That venom is empty. The 5 Hellions are over here, and the jet bikes are over here. The reason for all of these guys being on this side of the field is that on the other side, you have Interceptor squad, which is speedy, and a strike squad, and then the Dreadknight. The Dreadknight will probably not mess with, but these guys here should be able to pump in a lot of poison shots into the Interceptors or strike squad. The idea behind that being that maybe we can actually weaken this flank for the Grey Knights. The Dreadknight proves a bit of a problem as far as weakening is concerned, and we'll have cover and all of those things. So I don't know. It'll be a very interesting game. I'll try to talk a little bit more through tactics and why I do what I do in this game. Hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll be back in a minute. I will roll off. I guess I'll do that live so you know I'm not just cheating. I like to use one of my green dice for the Drukhari and a gray dice for the Grey Knights, or white die. So here we go. We'll see who goes first. It's a 1 and a 3, so the Grey Knights have first turn. No more choosing anymore. That's actually better for the Grey Knights anyways. They like to protect themselves before the enemy gets in their faces. So we'll be back in just a minute after Grey Knights turn 1. All right, folks. Grey Knight's turn 1 is over. I'm going to talk you through what happened here. Strike squad. They moved up just barely within 3 inches to raise the banner there. Paladins, the silver paladins with the Psycannons moved forward. They're 5 inches. So this front row that's inside that building, which is a ruin, so you can see through it and shoot through it, is the Psycannons, and the rest of these guys are the Stormbolters. We did spend some points on them for Cybolt ammunition, and we're in the shooting tide for first turn because I knew I would get things in range to do some potential damage, and I did. So the Grey Knights, having turn 1, helped tremendously for them. So with Cybolt ammunition, the Stormbolters were doing strength 6, -1 AP, and 2 flat damage. So they shot everything into the Raider, which was just close enough, thanks to their movements, to get it and kill it, and it did not explode, but I left the boom marker there to remind myself that's where it was. 1 witch did die getting out, so there's 9 witches left. The Psycannons in the front row here of this Paladin squad, with their Psycannons in the current tide being strength 8, 2 damage, they shot and killed the Venom over here. Now, there's a skull there because I had the Succubus and Trezar inside that Venom. One of the 2 died getting out of the Venom. Very frustrating. Couldn't decide really who to kill. So I killed Trezar, which might seem silly, but I think that the witches having the reroll ones in combat, you know what, now that I say it out loud, it seems even sillier. So I'm going to switch that. Instead of the Succubus, Trezar is the one that got out, and we'll stand there in just a minute. That was pretty silly of me. The witches can still do what the witches need to do without the Succubus. So yeah, I'm going to take that back. That's pretty funny. That was one of those things I probably just needed to talk it through to figure it out. But anywho, the Raider and the Venom both died, and instead of the Succubus, Drazar has died, and one Witch. So that's it from the shooting from this side of the board. These Strike Marines over here scooted around to raise the banner. Oh, that's the same group I already told you. For the Psychic phase, Librarian cast Empyrean Surge. Cast Empyrean Domination to gain a command point. Then we spent that command point for Empyrean Surge, so everybody here got the +1 to cast. The Apothecary cast Ethereal Manipulation on the other Paladin squad. And the Librarian cast Armored Resilience on the other Paladin squad. Then this Paladin squad cast Astral Aim onto the other Paladin squad. This squad of Strike Marines cast Gate of Infinity onto the other Paladin squad, and before the Paladin squad left, they had cast Hammerhand on themselves. So they all had the benefit of the +1 to cast from being nearby to the Librarian. So all of those spells went off, although I had to command reroll, I think it was Hammerhand, because they rolled double ones. Couldn't have that happening that early in the game on the Paladin. So I did that. So anyways, that's what all happened there. This Strike Squad stayed where they were, raised the banners. This Strike Squad, we shifted around a couple of reasons and directions, and this guy got up close enough to raise the banner there. This guy shuffled around back this direction to be in range of the Grand Master, who moved forward. This Interceptor Squad moved their 12-inch move. Here's the Paladins with all of their buffs and spells they have, as I mentioned, Astral Aim, Armored Resilience. They moved over here, so the Grand Master cast Sanctuary onto them, along with their Ethereal Manipulation and Hammerhand. One of them died attempting to charge both the Venoms, this Venom here, and this Reaper. The Reaper overwatched and killed one. It's kind of embarrassing when they've got all those buffs going on, but that's how the game goes sometimes. Over here, you see that we spent the 2 command points for Grandmaster to have Heed the Prognosticars, and then this squad here of Interceptors spent the command point to cast to get Psychic Channeling, so they had 3 dice to roll. Rolled for the Vortex of Doom, which went off. Not the super one, but it was still pretty effective. And so the closest thing and only thing that was 12 inches was this Venom, took 3 wounds. Hellions took 2 mortal wounds and did not shrug either of them. The Witches took 2 mortal wounds and did not shrug either of them. So it was a good Vortex. I enjoyed that. Then we spent the command point on the Interceptors for steady advance, so they could count as being stationary, which gives them bolter discipline, if you will. So they rapid fired into the remaining Hellions and killed off the squad. So the Hellions died right away. Then the Grandmaster targeted Psycannon into the Reaper, took 6 wounds off of it, and the Silencers went into these guys who are T5 thanks to their combat drug. And then we also went ahead and did Lightning Fast, because I was one of the few units that were in range to be targeted that could use Lightning Fast, and it paid off. It kept them to only losing 3 bikes in total, and that was from the Silencer shooting at them from the Grandmaster, so the Heavy Silencer, and we went ahead and put the Silencers from the Paladin squad into them as well, and did a whole total of 3 bikes dead. The Storm Bolters from these guys, we split fire and shot the Venom, did nothing. Then we shot and killed the last 3 Witches over here with the Storm Bolters. We didn't try to kill this Reaper because I had really hoped that they would make a charge all by themselves. They did not. It would have been nice, would have taken that objective away. It also would have gotten them, they're 9 inches from both the Venom and the Reaper, so they could have tied both of those vehicles up. But they did not. Very disappointed. Command re-rolled that charge, it still failed. And we lost a Paladin in the process thanks to Overwatch. So that's where we stand. Grey Knights are left with a total of 4 command points at the end of that turn, because that's just kind of how they roll. But they also did some work. Killed some units that needed to be dead. Slowed down some units over here like the Incubi and the Witches, because they no longer have the Raider to be able to bump them up and move them faster. So that means the Incubi could potentially die real fast being shot at, and the Witches probably will still make it into combat they get to move pretty fast, and that might keep them alive. So we'll be back in just a little bit with the Drukhari turn 1 coming up. Alright, so the end of the Drukhari turn 1. I felt like the Grey Knights had a good, strong first turn. I think the Drukhari were able to match that a little bit, but not quite enough killing on the part of the Drukhari. So the jet bikes advanced. They were able to advance and get far enough over to be just outside of an inch of both the Grandmaster and the Interceptors. And then they only had like a 6-inch charge, so they made the charge into the strike squad here. They killed 2 of the strike squad in combat, and the other 3, I forgot to base them. It's funny how you forget things when you're playing against yourself. It sounds silly, but it's true. So these 2, the Venom did base on that Strike Marine over there. These 2 came around to pile into him. So he also made the charge. I flew him up. He was the one with 3 wounds. He was right over on the other side of the Paladins. So he made his charge, didn't do any wounds. Then over here, these Strike Marines took all the shots from the Venoms that were supercharged and only managed to kill 2 because there's no AP on the poison weapons. But that's okay. It still, still does a thing. It still killed a few. Over here is where the real party happened. So the Paladins had a guy wounded from haywire blasters or haywire shots from the Talos. He had 1 wound left. The Witches moved, advanced, and had an easy 6-inch charge, so they charged, and when they did their pile in, they're on the other side of the building, which you'll see. So they tagged them. We used Black Cornucopians, and the Rack squad could land right here on the edge of this ruin, which was 9 inches from both the Paladins and 9 inches away from this end of the strike team. But what we did was we charged into the Paladins. They also made their charge exactly on a 9, so they got into the corner of the Paladin squad, did not get close enough to tag the Librarian, and the Librarian decided he didn't want anything to do with that anyways, even though racks we know are not the killiest things in the game. Still rather have some freedom of movement with him, etc., etc. So, piling in, the racks did all their attacks. They did not do anything to the Paladins. There were 5 in range. Their poison weapons, saving on 2s wasn't a big deal. Then the Witches fought the Agonizer. Actually did 1 damage, and it killed the guy that was wounded. All of the Hectari blades did another 4 wounds, and they say the Paladins saved all but 1 of them. I gave the Witch squad, the big Witch squad has the +1 strength, so they were wounding on force against Paladins and Marines. So that's why they were able to get wounds in, but again, no AP. So failing 1 was kind of funny, but it happened. I also spent the 2 command points for Masters of Combat. I actually thought we would lose 1 or 2 more of these guys just because of the number of attacks that would be coming in. So in the end, I wasted those 2 command points. The 1 guy that died did fight back, and he killed a rack, and then the rest of the guys in combat, there were 2 guys that we sent into the racks that did nothing with their 4-up invul saves. The rest of them went into the Witches, and we killed 6. So the Paladins, took their pound of flesh, but it left 4 Witches alive, and they did not fail their morale. So they needed a 2 to pass. They rolled a 2. It was terrific for them. They did, however, take the banner down, and they are now controlling the objective on this side. So in the next turn, if racks and or Witches are still alive, then, we get to score points on the overrun specific secondary. So that's cool. As it stands, Drazar and the Incubi moved around to get themselves out of line of sight, really. The Incubi moved all the way forward as much as they could, 7 inches, and then Drazar just kind of moved over to get a little bit of protection with Lookout Sir. There's not much that's going to be doing any shooting this turn, but they're trying to keep themselves a little protected. Let me think here. Well, I mean, obviously the Grey Knights have some tricks, but that is what it is. So that's what they're doing. They're kind of back here holding down this objective. These racks stayed still, holding that objective. The Talos and Homunculus got a big 6-inch advantage, so he's up here hiding in amongst the Talos because he has the Vexator mask, and these guys moved in the direction of the Paladins over here. We did not shoot anything at the Paladins because they have the 4-up invulnerable right now, -1 to wound right now. Would be a very difficult target to do a lot of work against, so we ignored them. The wounded Reaper shot and killed, which one did he shoot? He shot at the Grandmaster Dreadknight, got 1 wound through, CP rerolled and still failed to save on a 3-up invul, and that 1 wound did 6 damage. The overcharging D3 plus 1, no, it's 3, then D3 plus 1, so it really becomes 4 damage, plus the D3, so we rolled a 6. It was pretty impressive. Took half the wounds off the Dreadknight with only 1 round that got through. The other Reaper shot into the Interceptors, got 8 shots and managed to kill 2 of them, because, yeah, power armor -2 or -1 AP doesn't, 4-up saves. Anyways, it is what it is, but they did kind of chip some damage off. Nobody on the Grey Knight side failed morale, so everybody is still ticking. The Grandmaster Dreadknight is moving much slower now, but he's still pretty viable threat. And this side here is going to be a problem for the Grey Knights to crack. But I think we have some ways around that. So and also the Drukhari scored domination again because we're trading tit for tat. We don't actually control this one, which is why the raised banner has not been taken down. You have to control it to knock down the banner. I had been thought that you played it where as long as you got an engagement range, the banner came down, but you do have to control it to remove the banner. So this guy right here was exactly 3 inches away. So the Venom charging did not bump him backwards, so they still hold that, being objective secure. And that is that. So no extra victory points were scored beyond the domination points this turn. I'm just trying to make sure I remembered everything. Yeah, I believe so. So that's the end of that. We will come back at the end of this turn with Grey Knights turn 2 coming up. End of the Grey Knights turn 2. Pretty violent, pretty successful for the Grey Knights. These guys are going to pile in and hit because I charged the Venom with the Interceptors. They killed the Venom. It had a single wound left. So these guys didn't do any of their fighting yet, so they just turned around and piled in to touch the jet bikes to keep them from being able to shoot. They could still move, but they wouldn't be able to shoot anybody on their way out. So the jet bikes will smack the strike squad. That'll probably hurt. These guys moved up into the bunker so they could see out of it to shoot. They shot and finished off the Venom. The Paladins got jumped, Gate of Infinity. So the Strike Marines, they moved up to charge the Witches and Racks that were left, cast Gate of Infinity onto the Paladins. So the Paladins only jumped exactly 9 inches away from what was left. The Apothecary over here cast the Ethereal Manipulation onto the Paladins, so they were rerolling everything in half range. The Librarian, cast the CP regen, so we got a new CP, and then he cast Armored Resilience, and we just stayed into the tide of shooting. And these guys also cast Astral Aim onto themselves, so they were able to shoot the Witches, the Racks over here, didn't matter, line of sight wasn't a problem. 2 Psycannons were just barely in range to shoot at the Incubi all the way down the field, so we managed to kill a single Incubi with the Psycannons. Took all but 1 wound off of the Venom that was right there with the Psycannons, 2 of the Psycannons, and then all the Stormbolters fired into the Witches and finished off the Witches that were left. The Strike Marines killed 3 or 4 Racks with their rapid fire Stormbolters, which was kind of a surprise, but it's always been with 4-up invuls, it's always the weight of fire kind of wins the day. The Librarian added his shots and actually killed 2 more, so the Racks were only down to like 3 by the time we charged into them. So this strike squad and Apothecary made their charge into the Racks and killed them pretty easily. I've already shown you over here. I'll wrap up this combat down here in just a minute. I completely forgot to finish it after I piled in because they will get to hit them back. Home skillet here, moved to the center to give rerolls. So these guys were rerolling ones. They shot into the Reapers and did a little chip damage. These guys actually put a single shot into one of the Reapers that was wounded and knocked like a wound off. And then they had line of sight at the Talos, and all of the rest of their Stormbolters and Silencer shots went into the Talos, being that we're still in the tide of shooty shoot, proper term being the tide of convergence. The strength 5 and the extra damage, all the Silencer shots that came through and were unsaved were enough to kill one Talos and put the other one down to 5 wounds. Pretty impressive coming from Silencers. And 4 up invulnerable saves. Really what happened was I rolled a really large number of wounds and the Talos saved quite a few. I think 5 went through, and then I only rolled like 1s and 2s on my damage for all my Silencer shots, which turned into 2s and 3s. But if I'd rolled hotter on that, could have killed more of the Talos, which would have been pretty huge because they'll come in and do some work on the Paladin squad here soon. You can see, boom, boom, neither Reaper actually exploded, but both of them most certainly died. We killed the wounded Reaper with the Psycannon shots from Big Boy, Grandmaster Dreadknight, even though he was hitting on 4s, didn't matter, or 3s, excuse me, he's not that wounded yet. Didn't matter, he was able to get enough in to kill this Reaper. His Silencer shots from him went into the jet bikes over there and killed, I think, 2 more. And then these guys, obviously, making their charge like the bosses that they are. They were only an inch away. Came in and did the business on this Reaper. It actually took all the way down to my Staves. The only guy that didn't actually hit anything was the the Paragon with his hammer. Saving him for last. We failed so many psychic tests, so we failed to cast Hammerhand with them. Otherwise, it probably would have done better on the Reaper. We did spend the 1 command point for Fury of the Proven, so they were hitting everything on 2s. And I kept the last guy with the Falchions back in range of the Dreadknight, so we had the reroll 1s bubble going on still, which helped a bit because a couple of these guys whiffed on their first attempts, but they made up for it on the second try. And with only without Hammerhand, it was taking 5s and 6s to hurt the Reaper because I had left it in range of the Homunculus, so the Reapers were T7. So that is what was going on there. But in the end, they overcame. You will see another Paladin has died. The Reaper killed 2 Paladins in Overwatch. So 1 in the previous turn, 1 in this turn, except this time the Paladins made their charge. So that was, probably not horrible for them. In a pretty good place at the moment with the Grey Knights. The Drukhari are definitely stuck. The overrun secondary is not going to be as doable as I thought it would be for them. The Grey Knights are doing better than the last time I took them out, but also this army that they're facing has a lot fewer AP things, high AP things or high damage things. So what is going to happen next turn? Pretty sure we will have Incubi slaughtering some stuff on one side of the board, and we'll have Talos slaughtering stuff on the other side of the board, and then it's going to be a much closer game after that. Well, I think. We'll see. Regardless, back to the scoring. We did get domination again for the Grey Knights because we're holding 4 firmly at the moment, and we scored like 3 or 4 more points for Bring It Down with all the Venoms that we dropped and the 2 Reapers. And then picked up 2 points for Raise the Banners because this one, again, the banner was never taken down there, and this one we still have the banner up here. We did only score 5 points on primaries, though, because we were only holding 2 objectives at the start of this turn. So, for the amount of work that the Grey Knights just did, the damage that they just did, the score is actually not that far. And the Drukhari still have abilities to come back and do some work. So, I need to finish up this combat, so I'll take care of that in a minute. And it's funny the things you think about when you're recapping a turn. I just remembered the Drukhari can fall back and charge with a stratagem, so these guys are not nearly as stuck as I thought they were. But hey, it might, I mean, it's going to make them spend command points, so it's still kind of a positive. Yeah, that's all I can think of. So Grey Knights are down to like 1 command point left. Drukhari still have 3 or 4. It's enough to get some tricks up their sleeves, and yeah, we'll see what happens. It's an interesting game. It's going not the way I expected so far as how much the Grey Knights have killed in this game. However, the Drukhari still have a few pretty heavy damage dealers on the board, so I mean, there are definitely ways, as long as the turn goes their way. This turn 2 for Drukhari could be pretty spicy. So we'll be back in just a minute with Drukhari turn 2, and we'll summarize that for you shortly. It is the end of the Drukhari turn 2. Retaliation was had. Not sure it's going to be enough, but we did a thing. So we used Cruel Deception here to fall back from combat from these guys. Came over here, shot back into these guys, killed 1 Marine with the poison shots, charged in, killed 2 Interceptors, not enough for them to fill morale. When the Reavers attacked in combat, I think they killed another 1. No, they killed 2 in combat, excuse me. And then in the return fights, they killed the wounded jet bike, the 2 Interceptors did. So that's where we ended up there, but we did manage to take the banner down and control that objective now because we outnumber them, and neither of these guys are objective secure. So I actually win that with the Drukhari. Small victories, folks. Over here, nothing happened over there because everything was busy, as you saw before. However, Incubi and Drazar, with the ability to reroll failed charges, came in and made a mighty thundering charge. The way the strike squad was holding that objective, we were able to pile in and wrap a little bit around, staying outside the range of the Apothecary because he's pretty good in combat. And there was no way to actually charge into him. So the only thing we could have done by getting into the Apothecary would be to let him hit us for no reason, and that's no bueno. In the same manner, the way we piled in and fought, the Apothecary was too far away to heroically intervene. So there he sits. The Incubi, on their own, actually just 2 Incubi, killed the entire strike squad. Yeah, and that's with their not +1 strength weapons. Incubi are worth it. Pretty nasty. So they did what they needed to do. So we took this objective back. However, let's not forget, Paladins are still right there. So the poor Incubi are likely going to die. But we still were able to score points. We got Domination again, messing with things for the Grey Knights, so it's not a lost cause, but you know. These guys moved out from the trees, advanced, and got on the advance roll just enough to make it into distance to hold that objective, so we're still holding these 2 back here. This homunculus just rolled over this direction, got onto that objective. He is in range to at least try to deny any spells over here. Over here, big time party. So the Talos came around, shot the Haywire into the Dreadknight. Look at this. The Dreadknight failed one of the 2 wounds that were just a -1 AP, dropped him to 5 wounds. If there had been a 6 to wound from those Talos, he would be dead. As it was 2 4s and 2 5s, just single mortal wounds, leaving the Dreadknight on a single wound left. And with the very limited command points I had, it wasn't worth it to try to do true silver armor or to try to reroll that save, because math-wise, I knew he wasn't dead yet. But that was a bit much. Over here, these guys did the business. They survived without buffs. We lost 1 Paladin from the homunculus and the 2 Talos. So that was pretty powerful, pretty good. I like that. And then in the return smacks, the Paladins killed 1 Talos completely and dropped the other one down to 4 wounds remaining. So that's something. That's not insignificant. Again, that Talos did not explode. I just like the boom marker because it represents where something important was. So there are good number of points now for bring it down. There's only that one Talos left that I could score bring it down on. So it is what it is. I think I will max that out with a whole 9 points. Still got a lot of Grey Knights on the table. And so far the Drukhari have only killed a single unit, which was the one strike squad. We've whittled. So this group here is down to 2. This group is down to 2. These guys are at 3 over here in the bunker. So there's been a lot of damage dealt to the Grey Knights. The 2 Paladin bombs are still mostly intact. Yeah. I think that the Drukhari are going to have a hard time managing to win the game at this point, but it's not over till it's over. So we'll come back in a minute with Grey Knights turn 3, and we'll see if the Grey Knights can pull this one off or not. Should be a good round. I think it'll be a good turn for the Grey Knights, and probably less so for the poor Drukhari, but we'll see. We'll be back in just a little bit with Grey Knights turn 3. Well, as I expected, the Grey Knights turn 3 was powerful. So these guys moved around to get into range of that objective. And then they did a smite and killed a bike. The interceptors had not used their teleport once per game move yet, so they just teleported out of the combat and did a smite. And then this strike squad over here did a smite. And before all of these smites occurred, we used the Librarian to change the tide into the tide of escalation. So he cast the warp shaping, which put us in the tide of escalation, causing the extra wounds, then the double for mortal wounds, and smite. So the smites were all 2 damage, which was perfect for killing 2 wound bikes over on the other side. He also cast Empyrean Domination to give us an extra command point. So that's what happened to the Reavers. They were all dead through the psychic might of the Grey Knights. Then over here, we already saw that they fell back or teleported out and smote. They were actually a half an inch farther away from all of these juicy targets than they were from the bikes, which is why they were able to smite into the bikes. This guy, Grandmaster Dreadknight, on 1 wound, moved his whole 6 inches to get back into the reroll 1 bubble for the Paladins, cast Sanctuary on the Paladins themselves, smote the Talos, and let me see, somebody else. Oh, the Dreadknight also did a smite into the Talos, but the Dreadknight did his stuff before we changed tides, so the 4 wound Talos survived the psychic round with 1 wound left and was then finished off in combat. Again, he did not explode. I was disappointed. The Vexator Mask made the Paladins fight last, but it didn't end up mattering. The Homunculus did no wounds in combat. The Talos killed a Paladin, and I did spend the 2 command points for Masters of Combat. And the guy that died didn't do any wounds. He was not close enough to the Talos, so we put everything into the Homunculus, and Homunculus survived it just fine. So that's that. The little bit of shooting we did this turn was the Dreadknight shooting already at a -1, so he didn't hit very well, but he hit enough, dropped him to 1 wound remaining, so that Homunculus is still there, but he is hurt. So combat's not going to be a problem on that side of the board. Grey Knight's doing a business. This side of the board, we did use the Apothecary to cast Ethereal Manipulation on the Paladins, so they rerolled all their shots. Ironically, the low AP and then these guys, Incubi all having 3-up saves and Drazar having a 2-up save, meant that there was not a lot of damage that went through, with one exception. Drazar got shot by the Melt-A-Gun from the Librarian's Combi Melt-Up. It hit, it wounded. Drazar did not save it. I was in half range, so he rolled a 2d6, got 6 wounds. Drazar actually power from pain past 2 of them, so he was powered up, but only on 2 wounds remaining. Then he was charged by the Apothecary. The Apothecary got 3 wounds through with his hammer, and Drazar saved all 3 with 5-up invulnerable saves. It was epic. So that meant that the 2 paladins on the end, 3 on the end, had to put all their attacks into Drazar, which was enough to kill him, because Falchions +1 for the attack, +1 for the Falchions, that's 5 attacks a pop. So that was 10 plus 4 more for the Halberd on the charge, was 14 attacks. They all went through, well, not all went through, but they hit pretty well, wounded pretty well, and killed Drazar. He only had the 2 wounds left. Then the rest of the guys hit. My Paragon's up here just because he's not going to fit on that corner, but the way rules are in 9th, he could still hit because technically he's down here on the ground, slapping through the wall. And now that I say that, he might not have been able to reach. I'd have to do a measure. He probably did not. So I might have had an extra wound or 2 go through, thinking that he was in range to hit. Either way, the Incubi... That's interesting. Yeah, so there might be 1 more Incubi here, technically speaking. However, there is going to be a morale issue because they lost 8. No, they lost 7. Probably should have only lost 6. But still, they lost 6. So morale is going to be a thing. So you know what? Whilst I'm here, I might as well take care of that. So they are leadership 9, actually, with the sergeant still alive. But rolled a 4, 4 plus 6 is 10, so 1 more dies, and then we would have 2 left. 1 or a 2. Oh my gosh, double 1s. So yeah, didn't matter. The Incubi got scared and ran away. I've actually never failed that many morales on Incubi before. I feel bad for them now. So yeah, they just didn't want to keep playing with paladins over here. They are kind of nasty, but that's interesting. So you've just witnessed a failed morale of epic proportions over here. So the Incubi are no more, which means that the Drazar and the Incubi, they all died. The paladins will have free reign to come down here, shoot everything into the racks. I mean, the racks will get to shoot first, but all we have left now is a squad of 5 racks. 1 homunculus on 1 wing left. That is it. So we'll go ahead and do turn 3 for the Drukhari. But as you can see, Grey Knights are handily winning the race here for points and survivability, etc., etc. So yeah, good turn for the Grey Knights. They needed that one. And bad turn for the Drukhari. It is what it is. We'll be back after Drukhari. Turn 3 and see, I guess they can still score a few points. Again, in this turn, Grey Knights only scored 5 for primary, thanks to the way the Drukhari kept assaulting and taking points back. So that's something. And the Drukhari will still get 5 this turn for primary. So for primary, I think both sides have only scored 10 points in total because we've both been held to 2 objectives in each turn. So that's where we're at. End of turn 3 for the Grey Knights. Going into turn 3 for Drukhari, and at this point there's not really any shenaniganizing left to do, so this will be a good win for the Grey Knights. Feeling pretty good about themselves because this is a pretty good list for Drukhari. I'll have to think back over the game. I know the overrun secondary already, I can tell you that was a bad call. That's twice I've been suckered into doing a fun looking secondary from the mission that ended up biting me in the rear end. Just because in this case, the Grey Knights were not super interested in getting out and about, which I can tell you from now this experience is probably the best way to play them. But yeah, that's where we're at. So we'll be back in just a minute. Drukhari, turn 3 coming up. It went about as well as I expected. So these guys moved just a little bit. The guy with the Ossifactor shuffled around to get line of sight without being obscured onto these guys. Or not obscured, but shooting through the dense cover under here. He actually hit, and there was a wounded guy, so he killed the guy because it was overcharged. And then because when you kill something, a model in a unit with the Ossifactor, it then does D3 mortal wounds on the rest of the squad, but it only did 1. Had potentially get 2 paladins with that, which would have been pretty tasty. Instead, it just did 1 mortal wound on that guy. So that was him. The Hex Rifle did a shuffle, to try to come around, and you can see sort of through the tree forest thing, the Hex Rifle had line of sight onto the Dreadknight way back there, and range as well. He hit, and then he rolled a 1, and I was supercharged, so I command point re-rolled the wound to a 3, but it needed a 4 to wound the Dreadknight, but it was super close. It would have just killed him. Would have got the 3 points for, whatchamacallit, aboard the Witch. He tried, he really did. He did his best, and it was really close, but not enough. So, that's it. They did score 5 points again for Drukhari. These Drukhari. They scored 5 more points. I mean, that's it. I guess I'll just go ahead and play the game out because it won't take very long, but not much left to be said. So, end of Drukhari turn. The secondaries are killing them. I figured aboard the Witch would be a lot easier to score this turn, or this game. Being that the Grey Knights, they don't have, I mean, they've got still Marine saves with 3-up armor saves for the strike squads and 2-up saves for Terminators. But in some of the games I've played, it hasn't mattered. Like, just the save rolls haven't been good. This game, the save throws have been great. Yeah, it's really gone the way of the Grey Knights from the first turn. But hey, that's how it goes sometimes. So we'll be back after turn 4. Should be a pretty short turn. Not a lot left to move around, but there's still some tricks to pull. So we'll be back in just a minute with Grey Knights turn 4. So the end of the Grey Knights turn 4, moved forward to support with rerolls here, moved the interceptors up, they raised the banner on this objective. Paladins stomped forwards, got line of sight on the homunculus over here, and interestingly enough, when we measured it all out, the Paladins were the one that could see the visible guy there, they could see the homunculus was like 12.5 inches away. So we spent a command point for Powerful Adept, which gives you a plus 6-inch aura to your psychic spells. So we spent the 1 command point for the turn on that. Casted on a 4 on the dice, which becomes a 5 for Grey Knights. And the homunculus with the Helm of Spite said, let me try to deny that, because I had forgotten to do it previously. And he denied it. And then the immediate perils effect from being denied by the Helm of Spite did 3 mortal wounds naturally and just popped the Paladin. So for their brazenness and cheekiness, they lost a member. Then in the shooting phase, we went ahead and used Fury of the Proven to offset shooting through the dense cover at the homunculus and then also into these guys over here, the racks that were there. So the Paladins and the Dreadknight killed killed the homunculus and then killed all but 2 of these racks over here. So then I went over to this side, where I'll show you this side of the board. This was sort of a strange maneuver on my part. You'll see that I raised a banner. Characters are not allowed to raise banners, so all the Librarian did was move forward to stay within this range over here of these guys in case a buffing spell should best be used on them. For example, Armored Resilience, just in case, making them -1 to wound, and the Apothecary moved up with them. The Apothecary and Librarian were too far away to smite into the racks. However, the Librarian does have a combi bolter. His 2 shots hit and his 2 shots wounded, and the 2 racks did not save the 2 shots and died. It's a tragic story. So the Librarian did really, really well with his shooting in this game. Normally he doesn't, because he's usually in the back protected and just supporting things. So that is the end of the story for Drukhari. So these guys in the next turn will stomp forwards and will raise a banner there. The Paladins on that side will stomp forwards and raise a banner over there, just because that way I know I can max out raised banners, because you score it once in your command phase. I'll get 4 this turn coming up, and then you'll score it again at the end of the battle. So I know I can max that secondary. So this has been a mighty, mighty turn and game for the Grey Knights. My thoughts on this: I think I will continue to play around with this style of list. The double Paladin bomb was really good before. It seems to be really good still. And I will say the one thing I missed, and the reason that I kept things like ethereal manipulation and the knowledge of spells that the Librarian knows, is to be able to still have your reroll sort of aura. So if you've got a Paladin Bomb, they'll still get full rerolls and half range. You know, if you keep them near that character, that helps out a bit on efficiency with shooting. And only having one Grandmaster character, being the Dreadknight, was kind of tough. Surprisingly, he survived. I didn't know that he would. I didn't really think he would with the Haywire shots. But him being able to give reroll ones in combat and shooting made a pretty sizable difference in the game. So I think I like this, being able to have two ways to get rerolls in on two different sides of the board, so you can kind of split your forces and attack from different directions. It made a pretty big difference. So Drukhari, so sorry, didn't really go the way I expected it to, honestly. The last couple of times I've played Drukhari and Grey Knights, the Grey Knights were just handled pretty well by the Drukhari because of their speed and all of that. I will say the turn one going first for the Grey Knights made a pretty sizable difference for the Grey Knights, being able to get up and tie down some things that the Drukhari would have been using to spread out a lot faster and get into places a lot quicker. If the Incubi could have stayed in a Raider and shot forward turn one and then moved around in those kinds of ways, it would have been a very different game. The jet bikes, the Hellions getting to do what they were hoping to do would have made for a whole different game as well. So, you know, I still think I would have probably deployed the exact same way if I had to do it all over again. It is interesting. Maybe my style of play was wrong on that one, but I feel like it wasn't. I will say again, the secondary, mission-specific secondaries, if you score them at the end of your command phase, those are hard if you're trying to take stuff away from the opponent, especially in their deployment zone. But again, I expected strike squads to die a lot faster. I didn't think 2 out of 3 would still be on the board. Normally is not the case with strike squad currently, I'm sorry to say. So there's that. And again, the double paladins paid off because one paladin squad stayed in the back shooting and supporting, and one paladin squad went out and caused havoc in the enemy lines. So there you have it. That's my hot take. Grey Knights, 2 paladins, or 2 paladin bombs, and then, you know, your choice on the character support. Again, I didn't super miss the captain. The brother captain ability to boost your Grey Knight smite range to 24 inches is pretty cool. But I think it just comes down to your style of play. Like this worked really well. The Grey Knights did fine, and usually I find the enemy coming to me pretty quickly these days, so doubling the smite range isn't always what I'm after. It's fun and it's spicy, but at the points, this list came in at 1999 points, so there's not a lot of room left for other things, and I would have had to drop either Librarian or Apothecary and some other stuff to make a captain fit. I could reduce the number of interceptors I have and maybe trade the Apothecary for the captain, and that might be a fun thing to try. I might test that. Put the interceptors down to a 5-man squad instead of, I think I had 7 in this game, and swap the captain with the Apothecary. The Apothecary didn't do anything. Well, he did. He cast Ethereal Manipulation many times in this game. But as far as serving as an Apothecary, he did not do anything, and the captain would have made them just that much more dangerous at the super smite range. So it's worth a thought. In fact, I think I kind of like it now that I'm talking about it and thinking about it. We'll have to double check on points if that would actually work, but I think it would, and it would be kind of fun to try out. So yeah, there you go. 2,000 point game, a little bit more tactical. I tried to be a little more in depth with it. I don't know if that'll make anybody feel better or not. But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy it. Grey Knights winning the day today in handy fashion. So it's at least going to be an 80 or 90 point game. I'll finish the scoring here in a second. And Yeah, there's Grey Knights should get the full 45 primary, should get all the secondaries maxed except for Bring It Down. Oh, that was one other final thought. Abhor the Witch only scored 2 points. The Drukhari only killed one single unit, and that was a unit of Strike Marines, which is stunning, and just one more instance to prove that the Drukhari should have killed a lot more than they did. Kind of bizarre, but that's how it played out today. So I do like that Abhor the Witch has changed. I feel like it gives us a little bit more, what do you call it? It's a different type of secondary, I guess. It's not going to be an automatic 15 points for people to take it because you will have to kill a lot of stuff. So I like that too. So anyways, those are my thoughts. Those are my takes on the situation. And I'll figure out what the score would have been at the end of the game. And that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And we'll talk to you all later on in the interweb world.